All right. Well, we're here today for another episode of the Industrialist.
Let's go.
This is going to be fun. This is, man, we've been friends for 25 years, I guess. But as of the last 5 years, we kind of got back together and
That's right.
starting to get the band back together on all those things. And,
Yes, sir.
But here today with me is my good friend, Will Culpepper, the director of the Double T Varsity Club at Texas Tech.
That's right, man. Great to be here. Thanks for having me on. And it's always good to catch up and talk shop a little bit. And hopefully your audience will get something from it. If not, a few laughs or some insight on my life a little bit.
Yeah, this will be cool because I don't know, you've done a lot of dynamic things and you're doing a lot of dynamic things now too.
Yeah, for sure.
And so we first met when we were teammates together at Texas Tech, and you were a year older than us, but one thing I always admired about you was that you were cool to all the younger guys. Like you were like, "Hey man, come hang out with us. What are y'all doing this weekend? Come, hey, we're having a party at the apartment."
That was some other stories. Yeah. I think I'm sure you'll ask or we'll get into it, but I think it's my high school experience. I went to 4 different high schools, my dad being a coach. When I got to Texas Tech, I was like, this is my home. And my brother and sister were older. Mm-hmm. They were gone when I got into high school. And I moved around so much. So once I got to Tech and played football there, it was like, this is my family. Like, regardless if I was older, younger, whatever it was, like I was going to be good to them and they were a family member. And so I've just kind of approached that's how I was then. And kind of carried that over the rest of my life.
Yeah, no, well, that was just always something I remember. There's a couple guys that older, there's always some older guys. They weren't mean, but they were just kind of like,
I'm done.
But then there's always some guys, and then it always remind me like Rudy Rindo was like that a lot too. Man, Rudy's always like, "Come on, man, let's go."
Yeah.
So
the Gila monster, man.
Yeah. So, but well, man, let's just start from the beginning. You kind of touched on it. You went to 4 high schools, but where were you born? Where'd you grow up?
Yeah, I got some interesting trivia questions. If you ever do the game like 2 truths, 1 lie, I always have one that gets them. So my dad was a college football coach. He's in the Hall of Fame at Texas. Then coached at Tulane, Colorado, Baylor, Memphis, where obviously Texas. But then his that's not in order. But the last college stop, he was the head coach of Northern Illinois, and so. My mom and him, I was the youngest of 3 kids, but my mom, I was born 2 months early in January, and when my dad was the head coach of Northern Illinois. So I was born in DeKalb, Illinois, and I was actually born during the blizzard.
Oh, gosh.
And so actually my mom, they had to get snowplows in front of the ambulance to get to my mom. My dad had to ride a snowmobile to the hospital, and then we were there just a couple of years, and my dad was like, "I'm done with college." I think his first paycheck at Northern Illinois bought their first weight room.
Yeah,
he's like, "I want to get my family back to Texas." He was a D coordinator at Baylor for a little bit, and that's where my brother and sister were born in Waco. And he was like, "I just want to get them there. I'm tired of college." And he took the Midland High job. So I started out all the way up to kindergarten in Midland. So a lot of oil and gas executives in Midland now either played for or played against my dad's teams.
Yeah.
And so we were there, and then my dad was the head coach of Lufkin for 8 years. So 1st through 8th grade, I grew up in East Texas. And so that was really home to me. I thought I was going to be a Lufkin Panther all my life and wear the purple and gold. And, my dad really, obviously, football was a big part of our life. He was also a Marine reservist. So discipline, hard work, no pain, no gain, or what is weakness or pain is weakness leaving the body. Yeah. I mean, that whole, which, there's a lot of great to that. And he grew up, in the late 40s and 50s, and, he basically was gone a lot, not at home, but we bonded with football. I was around on the sidelines with him. I was, at practices as much as I could, and through 8th grade. And then he had to renew his contracts every year, and Lufkin would never give him a multi-year deal, and he was tired of am I going to get more money, or am I going to get, And so Galveston Ball called him, and they had just lost a head coach. Kind of, there was some controversy. I don't know what it was, but I don't know if you know much about Galveston Ball, but
it used to be a pretty big,
really good program.
Yeah.
And so he takes that job, and that was my introduction to high school. And it's a predominantly black high school.
Mm-hmm.
But I grew up, in the pretty much 80s, 90s. I mean, very diverse, in East Texas, and I was always around the team. So, but it was a great experience at Galveston Ball. We had 2 really good teams. I got moved up to Varsity into my sophomore year, just as a backup for the playoffs and stuff. But those 2 teams lost to Aldine MacArthur. Those 2 really good teams that lost in the state finals. But then Spring Westfield called him and basically gave him another $20,000 or $30,000 to go be their head coach. So we moved to Galveston Ball to Spring Westfield, and we were there. And it was really tough on me because I went from one place to being home to finally kind of getting settled in at Galveston Ball to moving to Spring Westfield. And I was a little nervous about it, but
was this your spring of your sophomore year?
Yep.
Moved to Spring Westfield.
Yep.
So moving into your junior year, you're okay.
Yeah. And what was neat, the upper class, which they had a lot of D1 guys, and I knew I wanted to play college football. That 9th and 10th grade year, I was starting to grow. I went from 5'9" or 5'10" to 6 foot, and I knew I was still growing. And it's man, I got a chance. And when we went to Spring Westfield, there were a few guys that went on to play college ball. Octavius Bishop played for Texas, and a few others played some places, but they kind of took me under their wing. So I really liked it there. And then my junior year, the season was going pretty good. We were going to make the playoffs, and there was one of our players, his aunt was forging signatures as his mom. So he's actually supposed to be living in one of the Aldine districts. And so they came to my dad and was like, hey, take the fall on this deal. And he was like, I'm done. And he was like, I'm just going to go take another job. He wasn't going to admit that he made any fall. I mean, I don't know the whole story, but I mean, he did everything straight up. My dad wasn't a shady character. I mean, he was tough on his players, but I mean, he loved his players up, and he coached them really hard, but all his players loved him. And so he was going to just take a coordinator job at San Angelo Central. So before the school board voted on the position, we moved out there, and I actually lived with the head coach there for 4 weeks. Well, the school board had other decisions they wanted to make, and they backed out on the whole deal. And I really loved it there. I mean, my class there, Reggie Savage was there. There were some other guys. That class was so great. The group of guys, and man, I was devastated. And my grandmother was sick in Cleburne, and so Dennis Parker, which that's a whole nother story about Coach Parker and my dad, because they coached against each other in East Texas. He hired my dad as the coordinator. My grandmother was sick there, so we got to end up being in Cleburne the last few months of my grandmother's life. And so we're there, and actually Cleburne was good to me. I'd grown up going there, and my dad's a legend there. So they just, everything I did, I was like, oh, you're Pat's son and all this. And it was good. And, but then I broke my wrist. My senior year, I was getting recruited by a lot of different schools and broke my wrist. And, back then, you didn't start taking visits till after the season. Whenever your season over, you would take visits. Well, all that started drying up, and it was the armed services and D2 and Minnesota and all this stuff. And I'm like, I want to play in the Big 12. And my dad, signing day came, and, I didn't get any Big 12 offers. And, I had the size, I had good tape, but I didn't have a lot. And I mean, my dad was like, hey, Spike and I are close in Lubbock. I'm close to the Baylor staff. Texas wasn't. I was done with Texas, and he told me not to go there because Makovic was a coach. And so we we went up to Lubbock, and we went to Waco, and there was just all this infighting. And I was like, man, I don't want to be part of that, man. It's just, Floyd Casey is in a shady part of town. And
well, they all got fired the next year, too.
They all got
because I had an offer from Baylor.
Yeah.
Because I'm a year behind you.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, this is might be my one legit offer. And I had a visit set up, and then they all got fired.
Yeah. And it was, and my dad said, and it's still, Waco's a better town. They got the Magnolia and Chip and Joanne, all that stuff. It's better. But it's not a great town. It's a great town to pass through, and it's in a spot where you can get to things quick. But, man, when I went to Lubbock, man, my dad was like, this place suits you, man. You have grit. You treat people right. They do it out there. And I fell in love with just the community. And Coach Goodner was a defensive coordinator, and he's just a great man. He was a lot like my dad, but probably a little more. He probably loved you up a little bit more than my dad did. Mm-hmm. Coach Goodner, I hit it off with him, and Spike, of course, I
don't know if Spike ever met a guy I didn't like.
No, and he was just great. But he'd tell you the truth, hey, you're going to come in here like scholarship players and have a chance to earn a scholarship. And man, I worked my tail off for 2.5 years. I met some really good people there. Obviously my best friends are there from there. I met my wife there, and we were both in long distance relationships and ended up being next door neighbors.
Yeah.
When I roomed with Hawkins, and we started dating, and had a great pastor and his wife that kind of mentored us as well and married us, and got married before my last year. But like I said, I got a scholarship after 2.5 years. That's a funny story if I can tell you too. Because it as a walk-on, you play through, injuries, you don't miss practice. Because you're it's not like now, if you have an injury, they're going to pull you whoever you are. If you've been a part of sports now, and even high school, but especially in college and above, it's like, hey, if you may have tweaked something, let's just hold you out. I think I missed one practice in 5 years because I literally was running 102 or 103 fever, and I had stuff coming out of my ears. I had the flu and an ear infection. They're like, go home.
Yeah.
But, later in life, I got my feet x-rays and ankles. I had broken ankle, broken foot, broken, fragments in my toes and anything like that. But anyways, I was, 2.5 years on, you're fighting for every practice, every spot, any special teams you can do. And I was playing in every game. So I felt good about that. But, you want to do more. But, with the signing classes and the people on the team and, look at the rosters, and I'm like, how many linebackers are they going to have? How many of this are they going to have? And I'm like, man, it's this summer. I don't know, before my junior year or something like that. Or my redshirt sophomore year or something right after it. And I'm in there working out. And back then, your position coaches or the football coaches really couldn't talk to you during the summer unless it was like, hey, how are you doing? Good.
Yeah.
You couldn't be coached, me talk. Now you have all kinds of different rules. But I got done with the workout, and Coach Clark, Kelvin Clark, he's like, hey, Will, have you went over and talked to Coach Goodner? I'm like, no. He's like, I think you need to talk to him. And I'm like, why would he want to talk to me in the summer? I was like,
oh no,
they're cut. I'm done. What am I going to do? Where am I going to go? Am I going to be able to play D1 ball? I can't believe it. Because I was just I don't know. I'm the type of person I always was. I've gotten better in my older age now. Man, I would just worry and be anxious about things and stuff like that. And definitely faith is a part of my life and talking about how to get through things. But man, I would just be like, man, why don't I have a scholarship in this? And I was dating my wife, Erin, at that time. And she would say, either you have faith or not. If God wants you to have a scholarship, He'll provide it. You're already doing everything a scholarship player would. And so that summer, it's like, Coach Clark, go see Coach Goodner. I'm like, I'm done. And so I'm walking over there with my head down and go over there and I walk into Coach Goodner's office. And I was like, hey, Coach Clark wanted me to say hi to you. And he goes, have you talked to Spike yet? I'm like, no, sir. And he's like, well, go talk to Spike and come see me afterwards. And I walk down the hall and I'm like, I can't believe my college football career's done. I'm like, I can't, man, I've worked so hard, man. I've contributed. Like my attitude's been good. My grades are good. I'm just like the whole time as I'm walking down the hall, and Miss Bailey's like, hey, the door's open. Go see Spike. And I walk in there, and Spike's got his feet up on the desk, and he's like, Pepper, how are you doing? I'm like, hey, coach. He goes, well, have a seat. And I'm like, golly, man, he's got a smile on his face. He's about to cut me. and he starts talking. I don't even remember what he said the first part. I'm like, just get to it, man. I'm just thinking about, and he goes, well, Pepper, and that's what he called me. He goes, well, we decided to put you on scholarship. I'm like, Coach, I thought you were getting rid of me. He goes, no way, man. You're like the glue of this damn ball. He just talked about being a glue, and that's what I was. I was a special teams, great attitude, never missed a workout, that type of guy. And walked out back down to, cloud nine to Coach Goodner's office, and he's like, well, go pick up your scholarship check. And I mean, just got to do that. And then, obviously played for Leach's first team, and then but I was ready. I got married in, my spring for my last year playing. I was ready to be done at that point. I knew I wasn't going to play professionally, and my wife was already teaching, and I needed to do something different. So,
well, there's something you kind of said in there that's interesting for, people to understand, is that, when you play football in high school, you're kind of playing with your boys, and you obviously got moved around a lot. Where but the most traditional setting is you're at a 4-year high school, right? Yeah. And you kind of work your way up through to becoming the man on varsity at some point. And there's really, I don't want to say that you're not going to lose your spot unless you just do something really bad, but there's a little seniority type thing in there.
Yeah.
You got freshmen and sophomores coming up and all that stuff. But if you're a contributor, you're probably gonna have a spot.
Sure.
But man, in college, it's like you're there your first year, you're just getting your lay of land of everything, and then boom, next year there's a whole new set of dudes in there that can come in and play right now, and you're like, damn,
yeah.
Because I just remember one thing. I guess one of the first practices, Chris Whitney trap blocked me. And, he's like all Big 12 offensive lineman. I felt like he hit me, and I did a flip. He hit me in the ear hole, and I just flipped.
Oh man,
because I was playing defensive tackle and scout team. But but my point is like, man, you never know when there's a dude that's going to show up that can take your spot, and it's about money there. I mean. The coaches love you, the coaches, all that stuff. But at the end of the day, results remain supreme in college football, especially big Division I college football.
Well, especially now too. It's crazy. I mean, it's true business. It's always been a business, but now even more. I mean, it's big dollars.
It's the minor leagues now, or pretty much somewhat of a major league. You know,
it's a challenge because you're still dealing with 18 to 22 or 23-year-olds, and I mean. I look back now, it's like 18 to 23. You don't know what's going on yet. You don't know how to manage money. I mean, but obviously I have inside knowledge with Texas Tech. That staff, and they've recruited really good kids too. I mean, they're still 18 to 23-year-olds, but it can't be said about that everywhere, but they do a good job of character and getting the right. But ultimately it's still like your investment, your time and energy and your job is depending on 8 to 22, 23-year-olds, the 18 to 22 and 23-year-olds. That's a difficult job. So I understand why they make a lot of money. I mean, and it brings a lot of revenue in. So it's a challenge for sure.
Well, you finished playing. Well, let me just ask this while we're still on that subject. Okay. What was your favorite memory of playing?
Man,
what was your favorite moment?
There's a few tackles I made on special teams. But really for me personally, because I do not like Texas at all, I think it was 97 fall there. I was on the kickoff return, and we were winning at halftime.
Yeah.
But I was on the kickoff return, and so Dane Johnson housed the kickoff return, and I was kind of a fullback, and I actually made the block that sprung him to go right up the middle to take it back. And I just remember looking up, and I was like, we're winning this game, because I think we went up either 10 or 14 at that point. I was like, we're going to beat Texas. And that was probably my favorite, best moment. I was part of the team, OU. We beat OU at home. Spike's last game, that was awesome. And, beating Texas another time. We had those games, but those are the ones that stick out to me. And I think a lot of athletes will say they're they're part of a lot of different plays, but you remember more like moments in the locker room or like I can remember like when we played Louisiana Lafayette there, in their student section, I think they were already drunk at 11 a.m. and like their whole student section would make fun of the people that didn't go in the game or their last names. And I was so thankful that I was in the game because they were clowning on so many, and there was a lot of cuss words involved and stuff. But I'm like, I just remember running out early for like, kickoff and punt return. And so I'd come off the field like 2 or 3 times in the first quarter, and I'd been involved. And I was like, man, I'm so glad I went in because they were. I'm not going to mention people. I'm not going to mention the players that they were dogging like 4 or 5 guys. Yeah, there's moments like that. My first travel game I remember was at Tennessee, and I remember Stoney Garland shutting their dog up, with a Smokey or whatever his name is, and we got smoked in that game. But
that's Peyton Manning.
Yeah, but I remember taking a picture, in the stands. That was my first travel game as a redshirt freshman. Stuff like that, and
they forced us to listen to Rocky Top, on repeat for like
a week,
for
2 days,
the
right?
whole 2 days.
Yeah. So those are probably my favorite. Probably that game against Texas, but that being a part of those wins,
that was my favorite memory. Was that game?
Yeah,
I didn't play, but I was there on the sidelines, and man, I was suited up for it. And I remember Wayne McGarity had some incredible catches.
Yeah.
And those when Ricky Williams was there, and but it was cool. My dad came on the field after the game, and I got a picture of me and my dad in my uniform with the double T with the score behind. I think it's 42-35 was the final score. Yeah. And so I found that picture and I blew it up and I framed it for my dad.
That's cool, man. That's really cool.
But that game was like magic. That, and then the year before when we beat A&M, and it was like an 11 o'clock game.
Yeah.
And A&M, we got in a massive like fight after the game. Do you remember like all the stands came down?
Yeah, it was nuts.
And then I put my helmet on because I was like, dude, I'm fixing to get punched. So I just put my helmet on, and I just remember these 2 core members like backed into each other and turned around and hit each other.
That's so great. There's so many stories like that. Like the year, I think this was like 01 or 02. I don't know. It was somewhere right after I was done when we beat them in Lubbock, and they put the goalposts. Yeah. They took the goalpost into the stands or whatever, and there was like Aggie on Aggie crime.
Yeah. It was a real thing.
But my brother's an Aggie. My dad's a Longhorn. My sister went to SMU. So,
you got all the Southwest Conference covered.
My dad was really good about like, because so many college coaches he was connected to them, recruited in the same areas, and a lot of them recruited his kids when he was in high school. My dad was like, you can go anywhere you want to, just not OU. Because, and he never lost to Arkansas, OU, or A&M his years at Texas. So, awesome. He was like, I'm good. Go wherever you want.
It's not OU.
Yeah, exactly. So,
okay, so you wrap up. You and Aaron are married.
Yep.
What's next?
So I literally didn't know what I wanted to do. And you remember Anthony Patricio, who's a lineman.
Yep.
He was a year ahead of me, but we had all the same graduate classes. So I didn't get my master's. I was on my way, but I was like, what do I need this for? What am I going to do with a master's? Like, sounds great, but like, is it going to get me a job that says, man, you are going to make a lot more money? And I was just doing research, like, I don't know, that doesn't make me more money. Like, so I was finishing my playing, and actually, cell phones had just came out at that point, but Anthony had went to work for a recruiting staffing company, and he calls me like maybe a week or 2 before our last game, our last regular season game. We were going to go to a bowl game, it looked like, and he's like, man, hey, you need to come work for this recruiting company, this staffing company. I'm like, what is that? I didn't know what you were talking about. He's like, we find people. I'm like, okay, but what do? We place them places. I'm like, where? I have no clue. And I had a business degree, and I was like, I'm going to go into sales and marketing. And I interviewed with Office Depot. Not Office Depot.
Was it Enterprise Rent-A-Car?
Enterprise.
Didn't everybody at Tech
Home Depot. Sorry, I don't know. Home Depot, Enterprise, maybe a Wells Fargo or Edward Jones or investment.
Right.
But I got a couple offers, and then I had some interviews on campus.
Mm-hmm.
I walked in there, and they had like recent grads interviewing grads, and like I went to the early ones so I could make practice and workouts. And like they were falling asleep when I'm like, that's not a good sign,
Yeah.
And so I didn't know what I want to do, but Anthony's like, I can get you an interview with, at that time it was called On-Site Companies, then became Aerotech, and now there's another name. And I keep up with some of those guys still, but he's like, come interview at On-Site. And I'm like, I have a week in between the last game and our bowl practices. And so Aaron scheduled interviews in Fort Worth, Arlington, one other place, and then I scheduled 2 or 3 interviews in DFW. She walked in, she went to her interview in Arlington. That was her third one, I think, and she got offered that job immediately. I interviewed with On-Site and walked in there, and Anthony introduced me to the director. I hit it off with the director. I was like, man, this sounds like, it was kind of like the boiler room.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't that the name of the movie?
Yeah.
So it was the same. You had the sales offices kind of in the rectangle, and then you had all the recruiters in the pit.
Yeah.
And it was this fast pace and just like, oh, I can do this. Like, it's competitive. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And so I accepted that job. I don't remember. I think they started me like 28,000, 30, something like that. And then, so Aaron took that, and then we went and played our bowl game. And then a week later, we went to Houston, drove back to Lubbock, get our stuff from Houston, loaded up in the U-Haul, found an apartment. We already had our apartment lined up, and moved to Arlington. She started, I started. And so I recruited so Anthony was already in sales by that time. He'd been working there 6-8 months.
Mm-hmm.
And I started, I was a recruiter, and I got in the light industrial skilled trades division. And so my original sales guy, his territory is Grand Prairie. And so, plenty about industrial real estate too.
Yeah.
So I knew I knew a little bit about industry. I mean, of course, I was in college, so I learned some stuff. But what Aerotech, On-Site Companies, Aerotech, whatever it's called now, they did a great job of training people. So your first week on the job, you shadowed in the house. Like, I showed up the first week, and they're like, you need to go buy new shoes. You can't wear those here. Mm-hmm. You can't wear that tie. It can't be a solid black with black slacks. You're not a waiter. They would hit you up, and you do role plays, and just like, this is how you make a phone call.
Yeah.
This is how they call it G2. It's a G2 process with a military term, but it's how when you call and you're looking for someone's information to see if they fit a position. I mean, they train you they send you to Baltimore as a recruiter. Mm-hmm. You get a week long of like intensive training, hitting you up, like telling you what you do wrong, what you do right. You have to do it in front of people. I mean, it's like completely nerve wracking. And I would say, like, you wouldn't think this, but many times in high school, I was kind of an introvert a little bit just because I was moving around. And not even at college I was, but I wasn't able to talk in front of people very much. And man, Aerotech, like that, the way they trained you, they forced you to like bring your strengths out. And if it was a weakness, they were going to hammer it. And so I came back, and my sales guy he ended up quitting, doing something, wanted to go into something else, maybe go be a pharmacist. Really good guy. His name was Randy White. Good dude. But then Anthony needed another recruiter. So I became Anthony's recruiter, and we just absolutely crushed it. Like,
that's cool.
They measure everything by spread, which is like profit on. So you place people, and it's really not, it's not temporaries, but it's long-term contracts. So warehouse workers, welders, machinists. I mean, anything in that world that's on contract, long-term contract to hire, anything. And you place some managers and maintenance mechanics and some higher end stuff. And then there was an engineering division, but I was on that skilled trade light industrial. So it's like recruiters had to do 5 a.m. walk-ins, third shift walk-ins. When you were starting a big group of people that were going to go work a long-term contract, you'd walk them in, you'd have to, you have to interview these people, place them. So I think at one point I had 120 or 150 workers in that Grand Prairie, Mansfield, light industrial area. So I learned about welding, machinist, anything to do with light industrial warehouse. I learned everything about it. And then, man, we grew the business, and they were like, we need somebody else to sell. And they're like, you're in. So I got promoted in 6 months, and man, it was a complete grind. They send you to training in Baltimore. For 3 years, it's just like grinding through cold calls and going to meetings and, just really creating they had a great like system to track things. But every salesperson has a way of doing things. And really, I took a lot of good things from Anthony and some other sales guys and like made it my own. So I started developing some processes. There were already some internal ones. But after about 3 or so years, man, I started have sales contests. It's averaging a certain amount of spread and profit weekly for the whole year. You had to hit a threshold. And if you did that, you and your spouse got to go to Cancun with all the rest of the Aerotech group, and made some friends that I keep up with now. Even that I actually saw one that's from Arizona that I saw. He came to Lubbock. His daughter's thinking about Texas. Saw him a couple of weeks ago. But so I started hitting contests, and then they made me like a sales shadow person for the division, senior sales guy. And so I actually created a sales shadow program for the whole region. So anyone that got promoted in my division in that region, people would come and shadow me for a week. And I still was selling my territory and had my own recruiters. And then they shadowed me, and then I'd go to their office, 6 to 9 weeks later and shadow them and see how they're doing. And really, it was just encouraging them, just like, as a sales cycle or anything happens, right? It's a bell curve. Like you start excited and everything's going good and maybe have a little win. Then it's like this plateau. And how do you keep that from a huge dip? And man, that's who I was. And then I got offered to go to Baltimore and train salespeople a few times a year. And I would do that. And then, so I hit 5 consecutive contests, and that was about the 2008 time frame. And Aaron and I were like, I was starting to interview for director roles, and we're going to have to move to like Sioux Falls or somewhere else. And I was like, man, I don't want to move from Texas. And, I think then their culture there was very much like, I don't want to say complete frat boy, but it was like, you worked hard. They played very hard as well. And like, I was already a family man, already had kids, already, married. And not that other people weren't, but I wasn't about all the time happy hours and stuff. I was like, I want to work hard. I want to produce. I want to go with my family. I want to hang with them. Not that I didn't do that sometimes, but I want my wife to be included and stuff. And so, my wife and I were praying about it, and we always wanted to get back to West Texas. And, I was...
Well, and Erin's from Midland, just to put context behind that. So
she'd say Odessa, but Permian. She went to Permian.
Yeah. Okay, sorry, Odessa.
Yeah. So. She didn't claim it anymore.
You need to go over that dynamic here in a minute, because there is a big dynamic out there.
Yeah, exactly. But she and I, we would go out and visit, and every time we'd drive back to DFW. So we were living in Mansfield. Man, she was just like, she'd cry. Like, I want to be back there close to my family where I can see them. Yeah. We don't see them every day or every week, but every few weeks, like we see each other. And
Yeah.
Man, we got to a good place financially, and the market was good. And I was like, well, I'll get my teaching certificate. Like, I've always wanted to coach. We saved some money, and she's like, all right, let's put our house on the market. And there's a lot of intricacies in there, but man, we started getting it shown. I gave Aerotech. Actually, go back a second. We literally went to downtown Dallas and stayed at the Wynn. And it was close to my birthday, or maybe her birthday. And we were like, we need to go to West Texas. And like, we prayed about it, and we're like, I was like, I need to go out there and coach. She's like, let's go. And we made that decision. I went to Aerotech about a month later and was like, hey, I want to put in a 4 or 5 months notice. I'm getting my coaching degree or certificate, and I'll set up the territory, everything. And they're like, no, we want you to. I said, it's not y'all. Like, we got to go out there. They didn't have an office out there. If they would have had, I probably would have just went to work there. But so I went to I Teach Texas, within 2 months, I already had all my stuff done for the coursework. My wife's a teacher and her mom's a teacher. So you have to like shadow or interview teachers. And so got that. We moved out there. We were getting 2 or 3 showings at our house every week. And, those of you in the real estate market know what 08 and 09 ended up happening. And so we, I think that was like 07 or 08, somewhere right in there. And all of a sudden, like, we just moved, and like our realtor was like, hey, we're going to get this sold. We're going to get this sold. So then all of a sudden it was like, well, it's starting to dry up, and we started panicking, and we had some savings. And then all of a sudden we're, not having showings, and we're paying, our mortgage plus our rent in Odessa. I'm teaching and coaching. A year goes by, almost 2 years go by, and it's like
no offers or no
real
offers.
About a year and a month into it, our across the street neighbor in Mansfield called us and said, hey, my wife and I are divorcing. We got to downsize a little bit. I'd love to rent your house and just live there, and I'm selling it. So it's actually a godsend that happened. He actually rented it for less than what we owed, but that's what we agreed. That was what the market was at. And so I was teaching and coaching. I was coaching 9th, 8th, and 7th for the Permian system. I was helping out on Friday nights. I had an assignment both those falls. And then in the spring, I took the JV group's offense one year and the JV group defense by myself. And then I would have varsity and stuff in the spring. I was about to go down the whole Permian varsity coach and all that. And we had lost everything financially. We had to, go in living in a 3,000 square foot home in Mansfield. Really nice neighborhood. Loved that neighborhood. It was great. And then to an apartment to a point where like we got to live with friends for a little bit. We had to do that. Pretty humbling. I think, God brings you through different times of your life to learn things about yourself. And thankfully I have a great wife and our faith is strong, but we got really tight during it. But toward that end of that second year of coaching and teaching, my wife was like, I'm not leaving you, but you have to do something different. And like, it was humbling to be like, cause I could see the path of like, oh, I'm going to go and I'm going to coach high school. I had pro connections, college connections. I'm going to go coach college somewhere. I'm going to go do it. I knew it was going to happen. Just like when I knew I was going to go hit contests and at Aerotech and do well, I was like, I could see the path clear as day. And she was like, I don't care about that. It's like, we got to just pay the bills for our kids. And I remember we were living with friends at that moment. And I was like, you're right. This is a foolish, selfish, and I was really good and I connected with the kids and foolish, selfish deal. And I got on my knees. I prayed literally the next weekend, I'm at my church in Midland, and I worked in the youth. I talked to the youth pastor. I'm like, hey, I don't know what I'm going to do. I know plenty of things. Like, I knew all kinds of industries. I didn't have any oil and gas direct sales. And talked to the youth pastor. He's like, hey, I know a guy and they've been looking for a sales guy for like 2 years. I'm like, I'll talk to him.
Yeah.
I met the guy, and I kind of knew him a little bit. He was working for Yellow House Machinery, and which is John Deere construction equipment.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, what have you sold before? And I'm like, well, it was recruiting and staffing, but I know, manufacturing, industrial, I knew I sold one of the places that I had welders placed at was a place in Mansfield, and they welded the buckets and the teeth on
the
loaders and stuff.
Yeah.
So I knew some transferable stuff. And he's like, well, tell me more your experience. And I'm like, I played football at Texas Tech, and I did. He goes, oh, stop there. He's like, our VP was a saddle tramp. He'll hire you on the spot. I'm like, okay, let's go.
Yeah.
I interviewed the next week, and so I was making like 35 as a coach and whatever. And I interviewed with him the next week, and they're like, we've been looking for a sales guy that knows how to build the territory. And I was like, well, that's what I did, in the recruiting staff. And they gave me a territory that didn't have a lot of, and I just went and worked it. And like, this was my process. And they were like, well, our pay is 100% commission. But when someone starts with us, they can take a salary. But when you go commission, you go 100% commission.
Yeah.
So while that's going on, my wife and I finally get an offer on our house in Mansfield. We have to end up short selling it. We have to bring $12,000 to closing. We literally have $0.
Yeah.
Like, I'm talking about no 401k, no nothing. So, call my parents. That's a whole other question, a whole other conversation. We don't do anything with them, but my wife's family, which that's another reason why I moved to West Texas. My wife's family is so great. Just, they actually been, my father and mother-in-law, they've been married 50 years now. And we just celebrated last weekend. Yeah. And they were like, we called them like, we need $12,000. we got to get rid of this.
Yeah.
And we'll figure it out. And they're like, hey, you can have it. We got it. Take it. And I wrote a note, and I'm like, we're going to pay it back. And so I started Yellow House. They were like, just name your salary. I just threw out a number, and they're like, okay. And it was like more than double what I was making coaching. So we were able to get a house, to rent one, and in 3 months at Yellow House, I went 100% commission, paid my father-in-law back, and off to the races.
That's
and
awesome.
Sold Yellow equipment, started learning oil and gas kind of business and just the industry, the ups and downs, and kind of saw that industry will go up and down a lot. But I was never dealing directly with the oil and gas companies. It was always a service company. Mm-hmm. And the closer you can get to the wellhead, basically, a lot of people say, the better off. And so another company kind of approached me, and I became their VP of sales. Mm-hmm. And then it was for pumping unit service, and kind of brought in new customers as well as managed a team. Knew nothing about, just like Yellow equipment, knew nothing about construction equipment. Went to pumping units. They're like, we're not hiring you because you know about pumping units. And I'm like, good, because I know nothing. I mean, I know what they do, but I'm not going to get real technical. And they just got me into, just energy and turning on every stone, meeting new people, connecting people, and then got into specialty chemicals. Yeah. And which was even closer to the wellhead, and just got involved learning completions, learning all that good stuff, and still interact with those guys a lot. Did well with them. Mm-hmm. Well, actually worked with the company. It was a startup, built it, then COVID happened. Mm-hmm. And it was really weird. I mean, I'm sure many of the people you talk to have dealt with private equity, but the company started acting like a private equity group, people had to slash salaries, but just, it was very cold, and they were taking a lot of the profits and investing it in R&D and building other things instead of holding some and building what's their moneymaker. And they let go of a buddy of mine. And once that happened, I was like, I'm done. And kind of left. And then a group approached me. It was like, hey, come run our sales. And it was a smaller group, and built that, did really well. And then a little over a year ago, Tech called, and Double T Varsity Club, the director was retiring, moving to Hawaii, and they were like, we need somebody that is connected to a lot of the former players. And I'm like, well, I'm that guy. So they pegged me, and I've been doing that.
Well, okay, so let's back up for a minute.
I just unloaded.
You just gave the whole gamut there, but so let's back up on a couple of things.
Okay.
So let's talk about Midland, Odessa. Okay, because fascinating place to me. Like
it really is.
One other just I want to tell one other interesting thing in here is I grew up in the steel business.
Mm-hmm.
Aaron's dad was in the steel business.
Yep.
I would talk to Aaron's dad.
That's crazy.
Pretty regularly, Actually, it's like, I know Aaron, I know Aubin,
Yeah.
So
he's part owner of that company now.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It just recently happened a year and a half ago. So.
That's great. Yeah. No, he was always great to me. Whenever I was, I didn't do a lot of, he did a lot of the alloys that would go into the oil field, but every now and then I'd have a call for that stuff, and they would have some odd type stuff, and I would talk to him, and it was always interesting connecting there. But okay, so Midland, Odessa.
All right.
What's the difference between Midland and Odessa?
I mean, people will tell you the people are good, but they'll just say it's blue collar and white collar. I mean,
okay, so
Odessa is your blue collar. Mm-hmm. Midland's your white collar. There's plenty of both in both. But they definitely, people look at it like that.
So I guess it's not Midland Lee anymore, right? It's Midland Legacy. Yeah.
Yes.
So Midland
Legacy.
That's
a controversy too. I'm not getting into that. I mean, it'll always be Midland Lee to me, because that's what it was when I was a kid. We lived there a little bit, and when we moved out there, it's wild. Yeah.
And Aaron went to Permian,
yep.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so Odessa and Midland Legacy, Permian and Legacy do not like each other.
No,
that's a massive rivalry.
That's a huge rivalry.
Yeah. So
huge rivalry. Yeah.
But Midland's been fascinating, and we have a lot of equity partners out there now, and it's. Have you watched the Landman show at all yet?
Yeah. So here's the funny thing about Landman too is like, just like Yellowstone is so sensationalized.
Yeah.
I know nothing about ranching or horse training or selling cattle.
Yeah.
But I'm sure the people that watch that, like, this is baloney, you know?
Yeah.
And like, you got to take any Hollywood show.
Sure.
So I don't look at it as like, is this going to be perfect?
Yeah.
Because it's all sensationalized. A landman, by the way, will not work on the landmen mostly spend time on spreadsheets.
Yeah.
And in courthouses.
Yeah.
And dealing with in offices. They're not out in the field.
No, they're touching. They're doing the deed searches.
Yeah, exactly.
They're like expert title examiners.
Exactly. But so like, if you just watch it for the comedy, like Billy Bob Thornton's character is hilarious.
Yeah,
like,
he is.
Aaron and I watch it, on Sundays. Like, we got 2 shows to watch tonight. It's like Yellowstone and Landman.
Yeah. Okay.
And but it's crazy. Terry Fuller, who is a big Texas Tech donor, he was hired by Taylor Sheridan, and I'm as a Double T Varsity Club director. I'm one of the I'm the chairman of the Hall of Fame, and I'm on the Hall of Fame on the Ring of Honor committee.
Mm-hmm.
And for the Ring of Honor, when we had our call last spring, Terry Fuller is a graduate of Tech, and I think in the 70s, but he's like historical, like encyclopedia of Texas Tech football knowledge. He is on that committee.
Yeah.
And so when we did our meeting at Tech for that, and Kirby Holt is the chairman, our AD, and we set that meeting up. Terry was one of the ones that couldn't be there. He had to Zoom in.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he was on the 4-6s because they were doing some of the scenes for the Landman. Well, he was there. He's their technical director, quote unquote, and training director to talk to them about what oil and gas field looks like. And I could read you a text. I can't read it all, but basically after 2 episodes in training, I guess, classes and being on the filming, they basically told him like, thank you, goodbye. Because he was like, you can't do that on a job location. And then they'll be like, a pump jack can't catch on fire. It's mostly steel.
Yeah.
Like it's, he just like hit him up and he goes, well, at least they added hard hats and H2S monitors, like they did a few things. Like you can't have that person on location without a hard hat, just like he would just like, he was hitting them up. And he said all the actors and actresses were really good about like listening and learning. But the art director was like, well, that doesn't look good for Hollywood. And he's like, well, that's not how it's really done, know? So, I mean, you just got to take it with the great, but I love the series. Taylor Sheridan's doing about the best things on TV, by the way.
I was looking at Paramount Channel and I was like, they should just call this the Taylor Sheridan channel. Like, have you watched Lioness?
Yeah, we did season 1 and we're on season 2, but
I just finished season 2 this past weekend.
Well, I heard he's going to do a 4-6 show too.
Yeah, I mean, keep rolling them out.
I mean, it's about one of the few good things that are on TV that's not sports, So
it's interesting, and he does a really good job. I mean, for him, I didn't really know who he was until after I watched Sons of Anarchy, and I watched Sons of Anarchy after it had already been off the air. Like I didn't watch it.
So he did that?
Yeah, he wrote that.
I didn't know that.
Him and Otto, the guy. Him and Otto wrote it.
I never knew that.
He's the lieutenant in it. He gets killed like in season 3 or something, 2 or 3. Yeah,
golly.
Yeah, he did that.
So I didn't watch the last season of maybe it's Sons of Anarchy, but we watched a lot of that too, and but I didn't realize he did that. Good for him, man.
Yeah, there was a time in my life when I was still in the steel business, and I was in a bad spot, man. And I was welding out parts every night. I was commercial real estating during the day and welding out parts at night because I just couldn't afford welders.
Yeah.
And man, I would go home. I would get home by 9:00 at night after welding parts, and I would take a shower and get all that shit off of me. Yeah. And then I would sit down and I would have 3 whiskeys and watch Sons of Anarchy till about 2 in the morning. And wake up and do it all over again.
And you were just like, can I weld this part so I can watch an episode?
Yeah. So I was like, I got to finish this up so I can get home and have my TX. And
that's so great.
But
man, you learned a lot about yourself about that. Huh?
Yeah, that was definite time for me then.
Yeah.
But
I love the show. Those are good. Yeah, but it's definitely sensationalized.
Sure.
But everything. But I like it. I mean the whole monologue that Billy Bob had about the lawyer
about the wind turbines.
I think that's I have a buddy that from Midland. He lives in the Woodlands now, but he works for a marketer. So they buy the oil from the oil and gas company, they sell it, and sell it to the refineries and everything. And he at one point had to go to New Mexico to talk to the somebody in regulation, and they had promoted a woman, very educated. He said she was so really good to talk to, super smart, and she had been a teacher, but now she was over like the oil and gas regulations or whatever. And so he had to meet with her and her advisor, and they were like, these oil, I don't know, New Mexico, this and about oil and gas, and they make it it's harder to do business in New Mexico, of course, than Texas. And she was like, so where are you selling the oil? And he was like, the the oil and gas. And he's like, well, some of the gas is going to China. Some of the oil is going here. It's domestic, it's international. And they're like, what are they using it for? And he said that the meeting had turned like kind of like negative. And, she was, and they had gotten to know each other. And he said that she's super positive. She's smart, trying to learn. And she's like, what are they using it for? And he could see that she was like about to like scold him. And she had her cell phone on the desk. He goes, well, do you know like the biggest percentage of your cell phone is a petroleum product? He was like, do you use lipstick? Do you, how'd you get here? What kind of car did you drive, of course? And do you ever fly? And then he rattled off like all the products, and she had to sit back, and she's like, I really didn't know that oil and gas provides that. And I think, people will tell you too, like oil and gas didn't do a very good job of marketing itself for so many years. And I think it's starting to turn where you're like, hey, we're not saying don't do other things, but the most bang for your buck, oil and gas does so much for this country and for each individual. You have to have it. And we need all forms of energy. I'm not just pro one or not pro something else, it's really, and the people are so good. Just going back to Midland, Odessa, I think per capita, I said this earlier, it's the most generous place in the United States.
Yeah.
As far as charities, as far as investing in things, the people there, highest rate, not highest, I think I have a lot of people that adopt out there, a lot of people that take care of different, underprivileged people that are struggling. A lot of people are very generous. And it's not just they're throwing money at, they actually serve too. They actually do things too, to help, not just like, I'm going to throw money at the problem. They want to help. And so it gets a bad rap, but the people there, and that's why we love West Texas. Even though I live in Lubbock, I go to Midland often. It's the people there are just, people in West Texas are just great people. And the industry reflects that, grit, hard work, take care of your fellow man, leaving a legacy, things like that. So
it's been fascinating to me, just kind of learning the tip of the surface on oil. It's like, I was like that one morning you and I were driving from Lubbock to Midland, probably 6 months ago. And we were sitting there, I was like, you're like, well, just think of this, I was like, how does oil work? You're like, well, just think of this in real estate terms. And
same thing.
It's the same thing. You buy the land, you start the construction site, which is the where they're going to drill the well,
the pad,
and then you're going to put the pump jack on it, and that's your building, and it's pumping cash flow out,
exactly,
every day, except for you have a lease forever, and your lease price changes all the time,
exactly,
and it could go cheaper than what it costs to operate, but you have to keep going,
exactly,
because
so it'll swing up the other way,
it'll swing the other way because shutting it down and turning it back on is more costly.
Exactly.
So I don't know.
It's a wild market.
It is. It's been very interesting. Just talking to those people out there and getting to know them more. And for me, getting to West Texas solely had to do with just going to play football.
Exactly.
I'd never been to West Texas in my whole life. Didn't know. I probably never got out of the Metroplex. Well, I've been to Houston because my brother went to Rice, but I knew I didn't want to go to Houston. So, West Texas has a totally different. It's I call West Texas an acquired taste, and it suits me well. It's not for everyone, but I really.
It's amazing the people that have relocated there. Obviously, a lot of people relocated from different areas of the country during COVID and stuff. But the people you meet, they're like, man, we just love it here. The people, and that's to me, West Texas starts with the people.
Yeah,
and it doesn't matter the product. Even moving from Midland and now we're in Lubbock. There's still a ton of oil and gas professionals, but there's a ton of software professionals there. There's a ton of healthcare professionals. Obviously that region, but then you have the agriculture industry there. But it's all like the people there that matriculate there.
Yeah.
It's all like cut from the same cloth, even if you didn't, grow up there. So,
and there's no traffic.
Love it. When I was coming in, I was like, man, I don't miss this at all.
I think you brought the weather with you because
it was snowing this morning in Lubbock.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, here we go.
Yeah.
I'm out of here.
Yeah. But man, I came in from touring a building just a minute ago and I was walking in and the wind, I was like, he brought West Texas with him.
Right,
the wind was just, and I was like, oh, the temperature's dropping.
Yeah.
But no, it's funny when we were out there a couple of weeks ago, Tammany was like, oh, we need somewhere to go eat. And you're like, go try this place. It's not it's only, well, what side of town are you on? She's like, what side of town are we on? It doesn't matter what side of town you're
10
on.
minutes
Yeah,
max.
It's 10 minutes anywhere.
Yeah.
She thought that was so funny.
I know. You just, since I've been out there so long, it's just like, oh, what? You just do it. But it's like 10 minutes. Nothing's very far from there. But.
Me and, when we'd gone out for the Texas Tech Real Estate Conference and Dylan and I went to practice early that morning on the Fast Friday practice. And then, we leave. It's about 8 a.m., 8:15. And we're like driving around. We're like, there's no traffic.
I love it. Oh, it's so good.
So that's definitely an appealing thing.
When I have to wait 5 minutes to get somewhere, I'm like, gosh, it's taking forever.
Yeah.
Then I roll into the DFW. I'm like, oh, I do not miss this. It's just, it's just too much.
Yeah, no, it is. Well, okay. So I want to get into you becoming the director of Double T Varsity Club, but I want to kind of say where I want to kind of give a little context here. So, one day, me and a guy a lot of people that listen to this will know, and is Summit Hogue. We go to lunch one day, and me and Summit had been like, just like messaging, and I was like, man, let's just go to lunch. Like we both play football at Tech. Like let's just, we're both in industrial real estate. Let's go to lunch, man. I just want to get to know you better. And so we were talking, and I had reconnected with Devin because Devin was in Prosper coaching, and me and Summit go to lunch, and Summit's like, yeah, I used to go to Devin and Sammy's football camp when I was a kid.
Yeah. And I worked that was the year I was coaching, by the way. Yeah.
And so, I was like, well, that's cool, man. That's great. And so after I got out of lunch, I texted Devin. I said, hey, man, I just had lunch with Summit Hogue, said he knew you, and, it was a great lunch, da-da-da-da. And Devin goes, oh, man, I totally forgot to call you. You need to come tomorrow. We're having a lunch at Rudy's.
This is what, 4 years ago?
It's like 4. Yeah, it's probably about 4 years ago. And I was like, a lunch? He goes, yeah, it's all ex-players. Like, you need to come to it. I was like, okay, well, I'll tell Summit to come too. And so I show up the next day, and you and I hadn't seen each other in 20 years.
It's been forever,
but we ended up sitting next to each other, and it was like, man, what are you up to?
Yeah.
And so
that's crazy.
And so that the whole point of that meeting was there was a lot of ex-players whose kids were just getting passed over and not really not really getting looked at. Like, and it wasn't I played here, my kid deserves a scholarship.
No,
it was like, can we just
call them?
Can we just get a call back?
So have I told you this story? Have I told you how I ended up there? Because I was living in Midland.
Okay. Yeah.
So Rudy, Renda, and Tim Wynn had approached Kirby and Matt Wells, who was coach at the time, kind of that problem, like, and then they were like, all right, we'll do this lunch. Well, Rudy calls me and he's like, can you type up some bullet points as a letterman, as a former player, how should we, interact with former players, but also like incorporate their families? Well, my dad was a Texas Longhorn in the Hall of Fame, and I remember growing up what it was like for him to be a Longhorn, and so I just fired off. And at that time, it wasn't that our director of the varsity club at that time was doing a bad job.
No,
he actually helped get it to the inside the university, and he was doing the right things to get it. But I shot off an email, and it had like 15 bullet points. Like, I mean, some of it was just sales. Like this is how we communicate. This is how we. Like, just make it a two-way, open door conversation, having access, getting people back, communicating. There were some like minute things that were like in the weeds that I included. But anyways, so then I sent that to him. I didn't even know what it was for. And he's like, you have to be at this lunch. And so that's how I got invited. I came out, and then I don't know if you remember at the lunch, like Kirby spoke, Wells spoke, and they're like, well, we want y'all this to be open forum. And he shot at the Rudy, and Rudy is like, let's start it with Will. and I just talked about how, I didn't go to Texas, but, because my dad was there, I was in their system at least. And I'm glad I didn't go there. And, and I just talked about, like, there are people in this room that have kids that they should have gotten a call, and it wasn't the AD or that current head coach's job. And so that's what I just talked about basically. So,
well, and it was, it was interesting because, there was a lot of guys that we played with whose sons were legit prospects, Monte Rager's son was a first round draft pick.
Yep.
We didn't get him, Devin's son, Gabe, went and played at Oklahoma State, and
House's son went to
Iowa State.
Yeah.
I mean, and
there's Byron Hansbard's son went to Baylor.
Yeah,
and he wasn't there, but he came the additional year.
And I remember, again, I'll bring up Chris Whitney, this guy. I just remember that meeting. He starts talking, and he was like,
he wasn't happy.
He was not happy. He was like, when I send you a kid, I need to know that you at least looked at him. He goes, I know what I'm talking about. And I was like,
you're right.
He does. He does.
Exactly.
And so, anyways, that was interesting. That was interesting. But what was great about that was, like, it was at least it was like a new beginning, right? It was like, okay, well, hey, let's, it's like the next one. I was like, Gaither, come to, it's like, and then, like,
I think the first year was like 30.
There's like 30 people there. Yeah.
Next year is like 40. Last year,
there's like 100. Like,
that was a lot. It was 70 plus. It was getting pretty big.
I remember I was standing in line to eat lunch and turn around. Hey, man, what's your name? I go, I'm Jeremy. He goes, I'm Jesse Pruitt. I was like, I know you.
Yeah, that's right. Jesse came back last year.
Yeah. So, Jesse's awesome. A legend, man.
He is. And, he's awesome, man.
And he was on here, man. God, what a story, man. You got to hear that guy's life story.
Well, so I think he may have told you off air, but, like, my dad is like one of his heroes.
Yeah.
Because he's from Burleson.
He's from down there.
Yeah. Or is it Glen Rose?
He's from, I think, Glen Rose.
Yeah, right.
And, he, at 8 years old, he had a paper route on horseback.
I wouldn't surprise.
Like,
my dad had a Shetland pony that followed him to school and busted the doors open looking for him in Cleburne in elementary school. So
that's awesome. Well, at that point in time, you're still working for the chemical company, Midland, and Rodney Allison's the director of the Double T Varsity Club at the time. Yeah. But you really just kind of took it upon yourself to be like, man, I'm gonna get everybody back to, okay, so I go back to, like, when we were freshmen and you were a sophomore, you're like, come on, man, everybody, y'all come hang out with, you know what I mean? Like, you kind of took that same mentality and you kind of put some sales behind it because you're like, man, I see what this could be, right?
Yeah,
it was, and I mean, just some great things have come out of that for me personally, that, me and Paul Erickson now talk all the time. I'm all roommate, It's like I was texting with him here. His son just signed with Penn, and so I was texting, I was trying to call him, and I got on calls and got mixed up. But, it's great, So now it's like every year we're trying to plan a tech game to meet each other because he lives in Omaha now. And it's like, but like we try to make that happen, and so you've done this wonderful, so you started doing this just wonderful job of, connecting everybody and keeping, and really putting momentum behind what is now an incredible system. And so, I don't know, I'll let you kind of speak about the process of all that. But.
Obviously, my faith is important to me. And, I think, put God first, love God first, and then love people like yourself, and love your neighbor as yourself. Those are kind of what I believe in. And, I think I've had some good mentors in my life, and I think as you get older, you're like, oh, you got to stand for something, or you got to have a saying or something or whatever it is. But like, I'm not a complicated person, and I'm not an engineer. I'm not a doctor or anything like that. I I think I told you earlier, I never knew my products great as a salesperson. I mean, I got dangerous with them, like I got it. I know it now. I can go. But I really boiled it down as like having a great attitude, giving great effort, and putting the team before yourself. If you do those things, like whatever you're doing, if you do those things, you'll get good at it.
Yeah.
And I just kind of taken that. And I think with that, also in my faith, but also that period of life when you're like forming close bonds, like in high school, or whatever, like that experience for me wasn't great. So when I got to Texas Tech, that became my family. And I obviously met my wife there.
Yeah.
And so that university was really good to me. And the experience there, with my best friends, close friends like yourself now, even, I look at it, what it helped God provided through that. I'm like, if I can't give the effort to make things great that are involved with it, then I'm not doing the best I can as a man. And so I took that attitude to like, how can I make things great? If like, I look at it as like, that's my giving back. I may not give back financially, but what I can do, it gives my passion and effort. And, I think that's, my wife would say, if I'm involved in it, I'm going to give everything. I don't do anything like halfway. And so, what you're saying, like there are no part-time gangsters.
Right.
Like I think if you're going to be involved in something, and that can also be a detriment, because if you have too many things, you really can't give everything. Something's going to slip. And so I think that's the one thing God's taught me over the last few, all my life, but even the last several years is like, I've had to say no to like, come be on my board, or come do this, or be part of this charity, or do this and help. I've just said like, I can't do that. Like I have my faith, my family. I have, my job and the things I'm involved with. And like, I can give those things, everything. I can't add a lot of other things. And so I think that's something I've just learned. It's like, if you're going to be involved, and, it doesn't mean you don't make changes, but I think that's the way I've approached that for a long time now. And so when the Texas Tech thing came up, I was like, man, Texas Tech gave me so much in my life. Like when I saw there was an avenue to help, even though I know like the guy, Rodney Allison, was doing a great job as a varsity club director, I was like, well, how can I help him? And I think after a couple of years, I realized like, hey, when he does retire, I know I'm going to get a call, because I've been doing a lot of things to help promote him and promote just the sheer connection of people. And so, obviously when that role came open, they called me, and now it's been great to see different things flourish. Like even the story about you reconnecting with Paul, but there's been some other connections and people I've met over the last year. It's like, I mean, my phone every week, I probably get 20 new contacts of, former players in different sports, but different stories. We started a business directory. We've, this week we're sending messages on our network. We're going to send, hopefully it'll get close to 50 messages of former football players sending messages to the current team about the bowl game. And obviously I want Texas Tech to win, but like, it's more than like just I'm more concerned about, these student athletes when they're done, because they're going to be faced with different challenges. Like, how can they be successful in real estate? Or if they're going to be a coach or teacher, do they have a support group of, here's 20 coaches that you can talk to. Here's 20 people in real estate you can go talk to. Here's people in sales in different industries that you can go talk to. And to me, I see that growing. And to me, those are a lot of wins. There's a former lady ready to play basketball. She's in the Hall of Fame. She works for Nike. And we started that business directory, and she's reached out to several people. And there's a football player that's been successful in business. He called me and he's like, thank you so much for connecting me. I was in the shoe apparel business. And so we've talked, and, I'm at a point in my life, I love to mentor people. And so like, to me, those wins are been fantastic to see. And it's really just doing the right thing. It's not like, obviously you want people to be successful, and I want my role to be very successful, but those things are the right thing and right thing to do. And I feel like if you approach business like that, like I believe you'll be successful. And I know timing has a lot to do with it, and follow up has a lot to do with it. But I think another thing, I think when Aaron and I lost everything, a lot of people, like the fear of failure or somebody saying no, or what are they going to think of me? I think that probably mattered a lot more to me in my 20s and early 30s. But when we lost everything, when I went back into sales and I owed my father-in-law money and I had $0 to my name, I didn't care if they told me no. It was like, how do I get them to say yes? Like, I'm going to do whatever it takes, as far as doing it the right way.
Yeah.
But if that means I got to show up on a location to go sell somebody something, if I have to be there early, if I have to stay late, if I have to follow up 10 times, if I have to be told no 100 times, they're already telling me no. And I've just approached that to my life. Like, I'm doing it from a good place. If I rub people the wrong way, like, I'll come back and apologize or whatever. But most people know I'm doing it for the right reasons. So, I just approach things like that. And that fear, I think fear of failure it paralyzes people, man. It just, you got to get to a place in your career, whatever you're doing, is like, okay, I'm doing it the right way. I'm doing it the way I've been asked. If I'm told no, especially in that sales realm, whatever, it's like, you're already being told no by thousands of people right now. So you just got to ask. Just ask. Let them tell you no, and then ask why. What can I do? Just those things. And so I just approached that in anything I've did. So, the one good thing about, and the easier thing for Texas Tech and everybody loves Texas Tech. There's very few former players that are like, I don't want anything to do with that. Yeah. You have a product that they want. You almost have to manage expectations more. You have a lot of people that feel like they're still on scholarship.
Yeah. but Will, I'm going to need 2 boxes this weekend. I'm going to need my own tailgate set up. Let me know when it's ready.
Hey, I've had that call. But no, I think that this is the first thing in my life. And this is literally the first thing in life that I'm quote unquote selling something, which I'm not selling, but you're always selling something. But this is the first thing that people actually are, the people that you're selling to are all in. Like at some point, they're all in on
There's
it.
not a big sales cycle with it. It's like, we're
okay, I'm there. I'll be there. It may be no, not this time, but at some point, so.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, no, that's pretty funny because you're right. I mean, at some point in life, you're always selling yourself. You know what I mean?
It's true.
And that's always, always a big thing. And this podcast is a lot about, sales and, adversity and stuff. But, there's one other thing on your life that I want to touch on that, it just speaks to your character, you and Aaron's character, of people, but adoption.
Yeah.
So you've adopted 3 kids.
Yep.
And, so tell me about how all that took place. And
well, I think, Aaron and I, we got married early. I was still in college. She had just finished, and I still had a year to play. And when we moved, when I started with Aerotech, and we were here in Mansfield, early on, we went to a Buckner's Harry Connick Jr. Concert about adoption. And we were talking in our early 20s like we'd do it one day. And, obviously talking about finances and stuff like that. Adoption is a huge step of faith, and we talked about it for a while. And we were getting close to our 40s, and we're in our late 30s, mid to late 30s. We're like, we were actually reading a book by Francis Chan called "For Crazy Love" in our small group at church, and it just talks about taking steps of faith and not sitting on the sidelines. I'm not paraphrasing it perfectly by any means, but just like a lot of people do things because of finances, and churches build mega churches and stuff. Like, well, what could you do with those finances if you directed it to different things? And so just coming out of that, we're like, man, we've been talking about this since our early 20s. If we're going to do anything, like we had 2 kids, and so we were actually what probably held us back were finances, but we didn't know. We had never researched adoption very much, and we talked about it. But there's an adoption agency. It's out of Midland and Decatur. They have 2 offices. It's called Addie's Hope. Well, they focus on children that are in the foster system that have termed out. So rights have been terminated, and so Aaron and I happened to be following the group on Facebook or whatever, and it was like the end of school year, and it was like, if you've ever thought about adoption but finances have been your holdup, come to our informational deal. And we're like, we got to go, like, and so we went, and we were the only couple that showed up, and they did a great job of like just explaining, hey, yes, it does cost money, and it will cost money if you grow your family. Obviously, that's a big financial commitment. But the initial, like, people that go to China or Russia or even domestically that do some agencies, it's much more expensive. And so we prayed about it. We went to the training session, and we spent that next summer you got to go through case studies. You got to go through people seeing your home, interviews, all that stuff. And you have to get certified to foster, but the placements are for full time, for them to be adopted. So we were like maybe 1, 2, and then God decided it would be 3. And so around Thanksgiving, they approached us with the information on our 3 kids, and we looked at it, looked at the redacted file, and then we had a call with the judge, a call with the caseworker, adoption agent, CPS, CASA. Everybody was on the call, and we got to talk to the foster parents, and we still talk to them too. Saw them a few weeks ago, and then they asked me most of the questions, like, what type of dad are you? Do you show affection? How do you discipline? And like, you're sitting there like, oh, you want the answers to be good. And then after the call, though, Aaron and I were like just bawling. We knew those were our kids, and you have to wait 20. Our agency was like, you have to wait 24 hours before you say yes or no. You don't get to meet the kids, do anything. And we said yes. And then we got to send them a Shutterfly book for Christmas. They found out they were being adopted, and then got to meet him through January. And then, this is almost 8 years ago. And so it'll be 8 years in February that they started living with us. And after 6 months, they were fully adopted, changed their last names, changed their first names. And so they're 14, 17, and 18 now. And they've been with us almost 8 years. So I have 2 older kids, almost 23-year-old and 21-year-old. So got a big family. And, adoption's on our heart. We're passionate about kids, and I think the Bible calls us to take care of widows and orphans, and we took that serious. And we hope and pray one day that some of our kids will adopt as well. It's just, I think at the time they gave us a stat, like if every church had one family that had adopted one child, all the children in Texas that are in the foster system would be adopted. And so that kind of hit us at heart. I think in that time there were 7,000 kids in the foster system in Texas. And I'm like, there's more churches than that. And so that's another good thing about Midland. There's so many people that we knew after we decided and found out that they had adopted. And so shout out to all the adoptive parents out there, because I know it's tough, and there's challenges in our family still. And then, but God's been great, and He's faithful. And we had a great testimony, and we're so close to all our kids, and we're just thankful for them all. Like, we couldn't imagine our family any different. It's crazy. Like my oldest son and my youngest son, like their personality is very similar as far as like just they're just kind to people, and they don't look the same. And then my oldest daughter and my my youngest daughter don't look alike, but they're very competitive and fiery and work very hard. And then my middle daughter, she's hilarious and has such a great attitude. Like just brings joy in the room. So God knew what He was doing when He gave us them. And Erin's a saint. She's been a great mom and like just poured into those kids. And we're just thankful. Like they've been great to us. So I know people are like, well, you've blessed those kids and you're doing so much for them. And I'm like, well, God's working through us, but those kids have taught us more about ourselves than they ever will know. So we're just definitely very thankful for it.
How's it look like when you the kids come? I mean, like day one, right?
Yeah.
It's like hey,
yeah. Well, I think there's obviously excitement. There was nerves. Like we're driving to where they were from, and we're like, how are they going to accept it? Because you don't go pick them up and they're your, that's you got to go spend a day with them, spend another day with them, spend it.
There's kind of like a courting period.
Because they have to be good with it. But like, how are they going to react? And like when we got out of the car, our two daughters like ran out and like, Mom, Dad, and hugged us. We're bawling, they are. And then my youngest son at that time, he was like in the house, like looking at me like, I don't want to do this, And but he was wanting to play a video game or watch something on TV more. And he was young at that point. But I think after hanging with them and knowing that they would be safe, they were ready because they knew they weren't going to be adopted. And that they were smart enough that they'd been in multiple foster homes before that, and so they knew like we want some stability. I compare it to like when you go to the ER when there's trauma going on, the ER is like the foster family. You're just saving kids. And the adoption is like the rehabilitation of like how do we just live life, and one of my daughters, like she was kind of mama bear. It's my youngest daughter, the middle adopted guy. She's like mama bear trying to raise the other two.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to talk to her. It's like, hey, we're mom and dad. We got it. We're gonna make sure everybody's fed.
Mm-hmm.
We'll make sure everybody has a place to stay. And then it's been a blessing to us for sure.
Yeah. No, it's very noble of you.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. God's good, man. He's a good God and gracious, and just thankful that he blessed us with all of our kids. So,
that's pretty awesome, man. That's just a testament to who you and Erin are, and
appreciate that, man.
So, well, let me ask you this: what are you most excited about right now that you're working on?
Well, a few things. One thing that I'm working on right now, and I have a donor for Texas Tech that he's a former player. We should have it. I don't know when it'll be approved, or it has been approved, but there's a contract. But there's a mental health deal that I've been working on. I think every athlete, even high school, but definitely college and pro, but when you're done with something that's been a part of your life for so long, it doesn't matter if it's a competition or a sport. When you think about a lot of these players, athletes, they've been doing stuff since before middle school for sure, then high school, and if you go to college, when you're done, there is a shock of my identity, and I'm very thankful. Like my faith is priority in my life, that I know God's number one, and I had my wife then. And so when I was done playing ball, I had my faith, my family, and I had a core group of friends that I can lean on.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously there's a former player that I worked with that helped me in that transition, but I still struggled on like, what am I doing? Like you go out from running in front of 50 to 60,000 people running out of a tunnel in front of the mask rider and hearing the crowd cheer for you, or being emotional when it's done, or losing, or whatever, all that you go from that and that camaraderie that you have. And I think you're trying to create that again. So I think this mental health deal I've been working on is It's a interventionist. He the company, I can't say it right now, but this company it's a call center, but it's really just a few individuals that will be assigned to the Texas Tech former players. That if a former student athlete or their intermediate family is going through depression, drug abuse, suicidal thoughts, just needs help, they're stuck mentally, whatever it is, they can call this number, and the interventionist will start talking to them, and then they will research your area where you're at in the country, and find you a psychologist, find you whoever, a rehab center. They will be part of that your process to healing, and so he already is working with a few universities. There's no Big 12 school doing that, and so he has talked to me about several things he's done. I won't say the university, but one university, he got a call. He said, my teammate is in the closet with a gun. He just got a DWI, he's going to lose his job. He's not in a good place. Calls him. The guy picks up the phone. He talks to him. He then calls 911. They get a cop there. The guy's doing, he talked him through that. I mean, that's an extreme case, but, and now he's referred that person to a psychologist. And the guy's called him. And then there was another one, a female golfer at a university was struggling with bulimia. This university offered the service, this intervention. She called, and she's doing on the track. And there's been a couple other things like that he shared with me, and he's done these like Zoom calls with all the athletes, and had like 2 or 3 athletes talk about it, about mental health, and don't be afraid to call a teammate, check on them, and just promoting that. Like I'm really, so I got a donor to basically agree to sponsor it 3 years. It's taken a little long. Anything with the university just takes the contract forever, but it should be approved. So that's probably the number one thing. Obviously the spring golf tournament that we have, I'd love to have a afternoon flight and an AM flight, and have 200. I'm probably going to ask to fundraise to help support it because it'll cost more money this year. But I think that we'll have a Norman South Lake lunch and stuff. Like, to me, those are the mental health deals on the forefront. The other things kind of in a rhythm that we'll do every year. But really and truthfully, I'm just excited. Like, we have a network that we're using for everything, but just like getting more people there and getting more people back. We have a Texas Tech has a Letterman's Lounge in the stadium now for football games, and so we get to host a lot of people during games, and so that's great, and really like those are normal rhythm things now. So it's not new, but it's still exciting. And I think too, like just the I think connecting more people, more success stories of, hey, this person came back for the first time, hearing that, or hey, I did business with this person, or hey, I got a job, or stuff like that. There's been some student athletes that are finishing up. I built some rapport with them that I know that I'm going to get to see them the next 10, 20 years of their life. That hopefully I get to interact with them continuously, and then see them be successful in business or other things. So those type of things, but specifically the mental health deal that's coming up, and just connecting people to you and to friends and stuff like that, and connecting with and really like getting people in our era back has been fun too. Like when you see guys like Tim Baker came back for the last, he was a receiver at Tech in the late 90s. Like he doesn't come back that much, and he came back, and it was good to see him. And just getting some of those guys back that are legends at Texas Tech that hadn't been back. So that's, it's
interesting. We had yesterday, me and Tim Wynn came over yesterday, and Devin was here too, and in the middle of all that, Hawkins calls me.
Oh, really?
It's like, it's kind of funny. We're all just sitting here, so
just FaceTime it.
So no, it's been really good. one thing I really appreciate is that you've kind of included everybody, whether you were a letterman or just an ex-player. You've included
It's all
everybody,
family,
right?
man.
We were all there doing those things together, whether we were a star or a scrub. But
there's more guys that if you think about it, there's more. I was on scholarship, walk on, but I was not a starter, and there's more non-starters in sports than there are starters.
Yeah.
So it's like
there's 22 guys that start.
There's a lot of people that just
roster.
practice. That's just part of it, man. Just it's been great. And I've been connected with Rudy and Tim for a while, but it's good to get to have conversations with guys. You think about you spend 4 to 5 years of your life with a group of people.
Yeah.
So if you're not connected with them for a few years or 10 years, it's like, well, we still spent like 5 years of our life together. So it's like you pick right back up. So that's really what's great about this role.
And it's a time, and it's an activity where it's not war or anything, but it's
a lot of work.
It's a lot of work together, it's a lot of time put in and stuff. So
yeah, for sure.
But that's been something that's been, really good that I appreciate you let if you were there, you can be there. You're part of it, so that's been great. Well, what's something about Will Culpepper that no one knows or most people don't know?
Well, I already gave the one out about being born during a blizzard.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Huh. Some people know this, but I have 8 tattoos and I want to get more. So that's, so I'm very conservative. I'm in church every week. But then when if I go swimming, they're like, oh man, he's really tatted up. And I do have an old school double T on my back, by the way. So, but I have 8 tattoos. I'm not done yet. And so that's probably one of the main things. And I'm trying to think if there's anything. I'm pretty normal, man.
Yeah. What's amazing now is they have that numbing cream that you can, use.
I haven't got one with that, so I'm going to try that
when
next.
I got all that done, man, that
numb this sucker up.
I was like, get that.
I have 2 big ones on my chest, and I'm like, I wish I would have had numbing cream.
Yeah.
Because that when it gets close to your sternum, you're like, oh, that hurts.
Man, I'll tell you at the top of my shoulder right here too, that bled a lot right there, but that was pretty intense.
I have like 10 other a list of them. I don't even remember all, but I have a list going in my notes. Like, I'm getting that. I'm getting that. It's just like finding the time and the money.
Yeah.
I have an artist in Midland. He's done a bunch.
Yeah.
There was a guy in DFW that was doing some when we lived here, but the guy in Midland's really good. And so, that's where I go. So, I think that's it, man.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, man, I appreciate you coming on and doing this. I've been wanting to get you when you come into town to do this because, such a great story. And, we're so close again now. And that's been a real blessing in my life, man. And, we talk 3-4 times a week now,
sure.
just what are you doing, man?
Yeah.
Just rolling down the road, so.
Yeah, it's been I think it's been a good thing for me in my life to have you back in it. And I appreciate your friendship and just more than I really appreciate it. I do have one question for you.
Yeah.
You don't have to answer this, but I need a nickname one day. I listened to one.
Oh, yeah. You want to get?
I'm not giving it myself. You may need to think about it for a little bit.
We need to. Here's what we need to do. We're me and one of my buddies are buying my brother's ranch. Okay. So when I get that all done, we're going to go out there, and then I'm going to get Isabella's dad to come out there.
Okay. And he's got to be part of it.
He's got to he brings them. He's the one that gives the nickname.
Okay.
So,
I need that for sure.
We'll get that time together.
We got it. I mean, Devin, I already call him Dev, but Devin will need one too. So.
Yeah. Oh, we'll play around lemons on that.
So. Lemon drop.
Yeah. No, we'll let Tom's very good at coming up with those things.
Yeah.
So
and then after you interact with him a few times, I'm sure you get another one.
I've had, like I said, I have two of them. He would call me Spoken from like Jeremy Spoken, and then he'd call me Baby Bro. So
yeah, definitely.
But yeah, no, we will definitely, but you're right. It doesn't have to happen right now. It takes time. Like there's going to be a moment, and it's like there it is.
Yeah, so. Devin and Charlie and Sammy have a few for me.
Yeah,
Sammy Morris has a couple different ones for me. So we'll see what Tom comes up with. No, thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm glad you can make it in today.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm glad that DFW is a big hub for tech. So
yeah, for sure.
Brings you in town a lot.
Oh yeah,
I'm glad that you've been a big catalyst in getting me back out to Lubbock a lot more.
For sure.
And going to more games and all that stuff.
Yeah, well, we need more Red Raiders doing business with Red Raiders. Doesn't matter if you're Red Raider or not, but that's what's been great to see you do business with other tech people. And, I mean, and really, it's just you want to do business with good people. I always do business with people that you like, that you trust, that work hard, and there's a lot of Red Raiders. There's a lot of non-Red Raiders like that too, but I know, the people you do business, there's a lot like that. So, and you do it the right way. And so it's been neat to see your success and I enjoy your podcast, man.
I appreciate it. Well,
I like listening to it too.
Yeah.
So.
Well, good. Yeah.
Sure.
Well, man, thanks for coming on.
Yep.
And
appreciate it,
I'm
man.
sure we'll have another episode one of these days.
Yeah,
so.
sure.
All right. Will Culpepper, everybody. Thanks, man.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Welcome.